journey beyond imposter syndrome. This is where I invite you into a space where high achievers and spiritual leaders converge to redefine success and self-worth. By sharing transformative stories and engaging with thought leaders, this podcast serves as a roadmap for navigating the complexities of imposter syndrome. It's an intimate look into overcoming personal barriers tailored for those who value wisdom, leadership, and intuition in business and life. Join me at the Humble Warrior Podcast with Alani Bankhead. Welcome to the Humble Warrior Podcast with Alani Bankhead. I'm your host, Alani Bankhead, best-selling author, professional speaker, including my TEDx talk, leadership consultant, and founder of Mighty Sparrow Coaching LLC. Okay, guys, so today I'm really excited to continue this journey by understanding what your specific imposter syndrome cycle looks like. Last time I had a solo podcast episode, we talked about level 6 and 7 because you have to be able to imagine what's possible before you can create it. And today we're actually going to talk about the remaining energetic levels, which are level 3, forgiveness, level 4, compassion, and level 5, peace. And so just real quick, level 3 forgiveness energy is centered around the belief that I win and you can win too. This is where rationalization happens. Basically, level 2 is anger control space. You get tired of being angry because the reality is that you're not meant to be in anger or control mode for extended periods of time. We find that really helpful when it comes to saving someone else's life or saving our own life or calling out danger or something like that. And so if you're in micromanager mode, or let's say you're really angry at your coworkers or your boss or your loved ones or whatever it might be, oftentimes we will want to get out of the discomfort of the anger by forgiving them. And if you hear yourself saying things like, it's fine, right? Anybody who has a significant other knows when you hear the words, it's fine, it's not actually fine. They're just trying to gloss over it so there's no more anger so you guys can move on from the conversation. And the advantage of forgiveness energy is that you can move past the anger, but the disadvantage is that all that rationalizing and it's fine life can be really exhausting over time. You're not meant to be in this lukewarm space of it's not terrible, but it's not great either. And over time, you might actually find yourself being cranky at having to constantly rationalize and put your needs last. Okay. Now, level 4 energy is compassionate energy. That thought says that you win, I lose. So forgiveness is I win and you can win too. Compassion is you win and I lose. This is where service lives. And service is actually the ultimate behavior of compassionate energy. So when you have this compassionate thought of, I just want to serve you, right? You win, I lose. That is going to generate service, which is a beautiful thing. I'm actually willing to bet that 8 out of 10 of you leave with compassionate energy, which is incredible. And that's how the world keeps going round, right? Our faith in humanity is restored because of incredible people like you. But there is no such thing as good or bad emotions, just advantages and disadvantages. Although the advantages that a lot of people get helped and you're really starting to think outside of your purely selfish tendencies, the disadvantage is that when you give and give, you end up depleted and resentful and pissed off. So this is where that saying comes from, where you cannot pour from an empty cup. This was something that I experienced for a long time. I led by level 4 compassionate living and thinking as well. I was raised to be of service. Most of us are. It's the right thing to do. You want to offer your gifts up in service to humanity to leave the world a better place. But I was also told things like, when you do the right thing, it just comes back around. What goes around comes around, whether it's good or bad or whatever it might be. Or I was taught that if you put your nose to the grindstone and do the work, that eventually someone's going to notice how awesome you are and you'll get that promotion or the kudos or whatever it is. Except that all of those core thoughts, if you haven't noticed, have a root of, I still want something back. And so, even though the intention is good, if you're doing something so that you can receive something in return, that is an unhealthy type of compassion. And so, when you're depleted and burned out and resentful, you're sitting there thinking, what did I do wrong? I don't understand why this happened. And you're really frustrated because you did everything right. You were of service. You loved people. You were not self centered. You were a person that operated from a place of humility. And so this is actually where I get really excited with people like you to explain what level 5 peace energy is. So remember that compassion energy says you win, I lose. Level 5 energy says we all win or we're not playing this game. And I love the first time a very compassionate person gets to experience level 5 peace energy, because in that moment when they realize that there's someone out there who wants me to win as badly as I want them to win, everything opens up, everything changes. All of a sudden, what they realize is somebody actually genuinely cares about me and wants a mutually beneficial relationship. Now, one of the things I hear a lot from people that I work with, as we're talking about this interplay between compassionate and peace energy, is they'll say things like, but the win for me is helping you. I love seeing you smile and I love being of service and it just feels really good. So, yeah, it will feel good in the short term. But underneath all of that, you actually have needs that need to get met. Otherwise, so as an example, in the child exploitation space or the anti human trafficking space, there are a ton of volunteers, people who say, I'm an intelligence analyst, I'm an investigator, I'm whatever. I want to be of service in the space because I just want to help the kiddos get out of the trafficking situation. So they expend so many resources, time, energy, money. People paid thousands of dollars to go to these conferences and do intel analysis work, or they do deep dives on the web or whatever it might be to find potential bad guys. And they feel good about it the first or maybe the second op. But then as their money starts to dwindle, as they realize they're not necessarily getting the feedback on what that work did to help the space, because the human trafficking space moves very quickly. Just because I'm not giving feedback on what happened to that investigation doesn't mean that your work didn't matter. I just don't have time to follow up, right? That's a massive issue in the justice system, is not closing that feedback loop. All that to say, so then people end up resentful and cranky and they don't want to help the system anymore because they have bills to pay. They need to put food on the table. They have a mortgage or rent that is due. And so at some point, you come to a place of, what about me? I love being of service, but what about me? And so for those clients that say initially, oh, I love helping people, that's the win for me. It takes a little bit of work for us to figure out, what does the actual win look like for you? And so once they have the courage to dig deep and figure out, I really would just love to meet with the child exploitation team at my corporate company and hear about their work. Like, I would love the opportunity. Oh my gosh, I would die at the opportunity to go work with them or for them. That would be amazing. So, I've told you guys in the spaces that I work in, I can teach anybody how to be an investigator. Literally. The job is not hard. The hard part is I can't teach you character and I can't teach you work ethic. And I've been through my pain points. I've shared them in the past where I overlooked those things, those red flags, and it bit me in the butt. Okay. So now when I'm interviewing people for the teams, what I'm actually looking for is, are you a person of character? Are you a hard worker? Are you humble and willing to learn? But I also need you to traverse that fine line of humility, but confidence in your abilities. It's a very fine skill to learn, but that's something that I absolutely love and need in people that end up working with me in the anti-exploitation space. And so coming back to that level 3, 4, 5. So remember, there are no good emotions or bad emotions. There are only advantages and disadvantages. And so I'm going to share the interplay of level 3 forgiveness, level 4 compassion, and level 5 peace through some examples of past operational work that I've done. Operation Keiki Shield, Operation Shine the Light were two of the operations that I created. Keiki is Hawaiian for child, so Operation Child Shield is basically what the op was called. And Operation Shine the Light was our missing and runaway foster kid recovery operation because foster kids are at a much higher risk of being trafficked than most other kids. And so when I first presented the concept of Keiki Shield to my boss, I want to give you a little bit of context of what was happening. I had just been hired at the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. I eventually became the alternate commander, but it was just my boss and I. And we did not have the bodies to run operations by ourselves. And I knew I could run cases, but I had a limit on how many cases I could run a year. If the goal of a task force is to be able to do the work en masse and create more efficient and better results, then that meant we had to reach out to the partners and bring them together. So I was like, okay, what do we have? And shockingly, we actually had money. We had budget that the Department of Justice had given us, and it had to get spent. We called all these agencies. I think it was about 16, 17 federal, state, local, military, law enforcement agencies. Basically, anybody that was willing to come, we invited them. And we presented the option to do these cases. So we said, hey, we understand everybody's busy. Everybody's overwhelmed. Nobody has enough manning or anything. We want to protect kids and we want to do it with you. So if you are willing, we will set up a 3-day operation. You can send as many or as few people as you want. And let me know what a win looks like for your agency. And we will build that into the operational metrics. Now, a little bit more context here. Yes, law enforcement, the justice system exists to serve other people, but just like everybody else, we have to pay the bills. So we get funding for our billets, and there's always someone on high who needs to verify that we are doing what we say we are doing and that we are justifying the massive resources that are going into doing the work. When I worked at my headquarters at Quantico the first time, I shared in the past about how my primary role was serving the field and identifying opportunities for them to do the work better and more efficiently and more fun, frankly, and to be very collaborative. But there was also a component of strategery where I actually had to inform the bosses above us as well what was going on. So that looked like strategic assessments on intelligence threats that were happening all over the world because we had to inform the decision makers on, hey, these are the actual threats, so they could allocate the proper resources to neutralize those threats. Another thing that we had to do was we had to pay the bills with Congress. We were a federal agency, we're with the military, they allocate billets and funding. And we have to say, with these bodies, we identified X number of spies or terrorists, we neutralized X number, we collected X number of intelligence reports. We have to pay the bills. And so I knew one of the only ways I was going to get people on board and to get them to keep coming back was if they told us what a win looked like and we could write it into the operation. And so that is an example of level 5 peace energy when I can create a true win for all of us. So the win for me is we get bodies because we need bodies if we want to run large scale operations. The win for them is they can take credit for whatever arrests or whatever bean counting they need help with. We can provide that for them. And so Operation Keiki Shield and Operation Shine the Light, which was the spinoff operation, were incredible, right? Oftentimes we talk about the results, but it was a lot of pain up front. Okay. So I'm actually going to run through the energy levels in order to explain the energy interplay that happened during the first 3 to 4 months that I spent planning Operation Keiki Shield 1. Level 1 is our victim energy. So obviously there's a part of me that's, oh my gosh, who am I to stand in front of all these law enforcement agencies and create an operation? They're going to laugh me out of the room. On top of that, we didn't have any staff. I barely had any relationship with these guys. And this is in a place where relationships have been ongoing for decades. They're very small communities. Everybody knows everybody else. The state has about a 1.3 million person population, which is tiny for a state. And I was pretty nervous about making the pitch. Now, before we went to the masses, we actually went to one of the law enforcement units. I'm not going to say which one it was, but it was a very big, very well known one. And we met with their chief and a couple of their deputies. And we said, we would love for you guys to come play. We have this money. All you have to do is sign this memorandum of agreement because the Department of Justice required it in order to receive the funding. And these people said no. They were like, no, we're not willing to do that with you guys. And my boss and I left scratching our heads. And to be fair, I understand where they were coming from. So this is my forgiveness energy coming to play, right? I don't want to be mad at them. I want to let it go. It's fine. It's fine. And so in the justice system, it is so type A, dog eat dog, that people come in talking a good game about let's work together and we want to help you. But really, what they want is to take. They want to take, they want to use your resources for their benefit. So I understood where they were coming from. Now, we let that go. And eventually, initially, 5 different partners said, we want to partner with you on this. A whole bunch of other ones also said they wanted to play, but the reality was that their behavior later on during the planning process indicated that they didn't actually believe the operation was going to be successful. There was even some potential sabotage, there were power plays. So, power plays would be squarely level 2 anger energy. So control is where level 2 stays. We were very close to starting this operation and we were in a legal meeting. So I usually did a meeting where all the prosecutors came and we hashed out jurisdiction. We talked through who wanted to take what cases. We talked about legal thresholds. And in this legal meeting, a certain entity made a big power play to exclude a certain group of people. Me being the level 5 collaborative win person, I was so mad. Level 2, right? I'm angry. I honestly want to crush them. So that meeting happened on a Friday. I'll never forget. I stewed all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. I come back to the office Monday and I tell the boss, I have a solution. I rewrote the entire operation to not include the power playing unit because I don't have time for that. We're being very gracious. We're paying a lot of money for them to be here. So I came in and I said, I have rewritten the entire operation to exclude those people because in my world, that level of aggression is never going to be rewarded. And so that was me harnessing my level 2 saying, I'm winning and you're going to lose. You want to be a jerk about it? I can win. I'm going to control this situation. And so there was a lot of level 1, 2, 3 interplay as I was massaging relationships, trying to figure out what people wanted and needed, trying to negotiate what the operation was going to look like. And so when we talk about level 4, 5, 6, and 7, so level 1, 2, 3 is very catabolic or life draining. And then level 4, 5, 6, 7 is much more anabolic or life giving. Again, there's no good or bad emotion, there's just advantages and disadvantages. And I was primarily focused on being a person of service. I just wanted everybody to get along well, right? And it took some time. Once I was able to get out of that catabolic energy and really continue to focus on trying to create those win-wins for everybody, or at least believe that we were always winning all the time, I started really being able to tap into that wisdom and that creation, which are the results of level 5 and level 6 and 7 energy. And so when I was younger, I oftentimes would be working so much that Pausing to take a breath and take in what I was experiencing was just a no go. I have very few pictures from my first 10 years in my career because I didn't think that it was important to collect that. Once I started understanding what imposter syndrome was, how it affected me, and when started to be able to undo the effects of it, I started to recognize that being present, which is a function of a level 6, 7 space, was really what I wanted to focus on. So, your inner imposter and fear and self doubt actually only exist in the past and in the future. So, in the past, your inner imposter is constantly telling you that you're not good enough because look at these things you did in the past. Because you did that, then you're not worthy now and you won't be worthy in the future. And so it stops you from taking action in your present and creating future outcomes because you're not being present in the moment. I'm going to talk a little bit about what your inner imposter syndrome cycle looks like. So, typically, when somebody experiences imposter syndrome, you actually want to completely avoid it. That means you hear that voice saying, I am not good enough for some reason. I'm not smart enough. I'm not educated enough. In my case, it was I'm too female, too Latina, too brown, and I look too young. And that causes you to hide. It causes you to not take action. Now, what does not taking action look like? And so let's talk for a second about level 1 behaviors that are very typical. Doom scrolling on your cell phone, a number one. It is a time suck, but you love going into your phone because you want to escape your reality. Same thing goes with binging Netflix or sitting down and watching the boob tube and completely wanting to immerse yourself in that world because the world you're in is very uncomfortable or maybe even painful for you. Other behaviors, eating too much, eating unhealthy foods, taking substances, abusing alcohol. These are all things that you want to do because when you are a victim and you're not taking action, that doesn't feel good. The binge watching helps you escape that reality. The eating, the drinking, the substance use also helps you escape that reality. So you're harnessing your level 2 energy to a certain degree so you feel somewhat in control of your circumstances. Can't do anything about that job promotion, may as well go eat this tub of ice cream because at least that's going to make me feel better. So that's you trying to take action. And so you're going to hide. You're not going to take action on the dreams that you want to do because you're hiding. And then you're going to get agitated. And what that is, that lack of peace, is actually the best part of you, whether you call it your intuition, your soul, the Holy Spirit indwelling. But there's that tiny voice inside of you that says, you really should be doing that life purpose thing. You need to get up and you need to do it. So, that incredible part of you that is the best of you is fighting and is in conflict with your inner imposter syndrome that is telling you, no, just stay safe. Don't put yourself out there so you don't get hurt. And that agitation is going to lead you to beating yourself up. I'm never good enough. Things never work out for me. I try everything I can. It just never really works out, which causes you to hide more. And now we're starting that imposter syndrome cycle all over again. So, amazing thing that will lead you to your life purpose pops up. Your inner imposter shows up to protect you and keep you from taking action because if you don't take action, you can't get hurt. And so you hide. That binging of Netflix, the doom scrolling, the eating, the drinking, whatever it might be, lets you escape your reality. It gives you an excuse not to take action. That leads the best part of you to get agitated because you're not achieving your life purpose. Then you beat yourself up for not achieving your life purpose and then you hide. Got it? Great. So now I'm going to talk through what the imposter syndrome cycle looks like when you are harnessing it. So when you're choosing to lean into what your imposter says is your biggest weakness, we are leaning into that and making it work for us. Another way of explaining that is I've explained what the energy leadership index is. We've talked about all the different emotional outputs that you can have. So rather than you being a victim of your emotions and letting your emotions control you, you are now teaching yourself how to tap into every emotion at the right time to benefit you and your life purpose. So, What that cycle looked like for me when I was working Operation Keiki Shield in the beginning. These operations would often have between 50 and 100 investigators, special agents, intelligence analysts, admins, support staff. It was incredible the resources that people wanted to bring to the table. And that is intimidating. So even though I really wanted to do this thing, what a lot of people don't realize is how terrified I was for about 3 days before every operation. I remember it was like clockwork. 3 days before, my imposter syndrome would become overwhelming. I would be in the fetal position on the couch, having heart palpitations. I would talk to myself and be like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. What if we don't get any arrests? What if nothing good happens? What if somebody gets hurt? All these bad things that could happen that my imposter was telling me, these are all the reasons why you shouldn't do this op. I literally would tell myself, I can cancel the op. It's my op, right? How many times have you wanted to be the boss so you could do things your way? And here I was, finally the boss, actually telling myself I could turn it off because I didn't want to deal with possible bad outcomes. And so even though the operations had massive success, by the time I left, we had around 90 arrests. We'd identified like 25 child victims. We had a 96% conviction rate. Statistics that are largely unheard of in the justice system that continue on. So those operations are still happening in different parts of the Pacific. And despite all those wins, the reality of what was happening in my head and in my heart was I was really scared and I was in my victim mindset. I promise you, anybody who worked those operations would tell you that they had no clue I felt that way. And so, what I discovered about my imposter syndrome cycle was when my inner imposter pops up, means that historically, if I push through, there is going to be a miracle around the corner. Thankfully, I had the benefit of hindsight because I had dozens or even hundreds of operations that I'd done in the past that proved that I was capable of creating success in this space. But part of the issue is when it comes to protecting kids, the stakes are so high, right? This isn't just money or somebody stole some data on some specs on some Swiss Army knife or something and they're replicating it, right? These are kids' lives. These are suspects who want to hurt kids. If you screw up, really bad things can happen. It's actually a good sign when your imposter syndrome pops up. And remember, what you think is your weakness is the key to unlocking your greatest power. For me, too small, too female, too young looking, too brown. What ended up working for me was because of my physical appearance, people felt very comfortable around me. They were like, what? That little midget, she's running things. Okay. It was a lot easier for them to tell me bad news, show me their problems. We could talk through it. Kindness is one of my top values, and I hope that showed. I think that showed. And so people were much more willing to come talk about problems rather than feeling intimidated because of my physical appearance. Because trust me, I appear zero threat. Okay. And so I knew that was one of my strengths at the end of the day. And anybody who wanted to disrespect me because of what I look like, and there was plenty of disrespect, don't get it twisted. There was plenty of disrespect. So I would just have to lead with what I had, which was the desire to bring the teams together, the ability to make people feel comfortable, and to create an environment where we could fail faster to better protect kids. So the guidance I gave the teams was always, you can mess up. I expect you to mess up. I will mess up. Lord, there were plenty of times that I messed up. However, I expect you to learn from your mistake because what's not okay is messing up the same thing 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And so if you mess up, I expect you to tell your team leader about it because we need those lessons learned so that we can make sure we don't make those mistakes again. It is not to embarrass anybody, it's so that we can learn. And you can imagine over 15 iterations of operations, we got really good at building in success. That's part of why we got 96% conviction rate because we were able to not make mistakes over and over again. And when your imposter syndrome comes up, you're going to feel whatever physical sensations you experience in your inner imposter. For me, it's I get a pit in my stomach, I want to throw up, I get clammy hands, I can feel my heart rate in my ears. And when you are in your level 1 victim mindset, I want you to be aware of this thing that I call spiritual amnesia. Your inner imposter is the unhealthy part of your ego that's trying to keep you safe from being embarrassed. And when you're in the throes of an attack like that, you completely forget about all the stuff you did in the past. So, literally, the thing that first gets me out of my imposter syndrome mode is curiosity. So, I can sit there and mope for a day. It usually took me at least half a day. But then I'd come to a place of asking myself, why do I feel this way? And when else have I felt this way? And then I would have the aha moment of, oh, actually, every time you've ever done something big, you feel this way. And I would feel so stupid, if I'm really honest, you guys, because I suddenly would remember all the other things I did in the past, all the ways that I supported the mission to success. And I felt so silly. But I know that this happens with you guys when you're in your imposter syndrome. All of my clients experience it. This is a common thing that's happening because when you are in victim mode, you can't be creative. You're just focusing on how to survive. Okay. So once you have your aha moment, this is where we can bring the ELI into play. This is where you can choose a different thought. And so we work backwards from the ELI. Cognitive triangle says thoughts lead to emotions, lead to behaviors. So, what emotion would you rather be at as you're getting ready to launch this thing? Level 1, victim. Level 2, anger and control. Level 3, forgiveness. Level 4, compassion. Level 5, we all win or we don't play. Level 6, joy. We all win all the time. Level 7, winning and losing are illusions. And when you decide the thought you want to have, so let's say I want to have the thought that we are always winning all the time. That's level 6, that's joy. So, what thought would I need to have in order to experience that in my body? The thought I would need to have about the specific operation is even when things go quote unquote bad, all of that is working out for good somehow. And when else has that been true for me? And I can think of so many examples where something went horribly wrong. I thought my life was over. I thought my career was over. And I didn't have the awareness at the time, but stuff happened afterwards where I can now look back and say, man, that was painful, but I'm so glad it happened because if that had not happened, all these other blessings would not have shown up. And so I was like, okay, I want to go to that we always win space. Now, what mechanisms do I need to use in order to get my body to catch up with the decision I've made? Because now you're having dissonance in your body where your body's, whoa, are you sure? Now we're in like, woo, frou frou. I don't think that's actually going to happen, land. And there are tons of spiritual practices that you can employ. But my personal favorites are listening to music. So I actually have a playlist on YouTube that I use every time I'm going to go into an operation. Why music works so well for me and for so many other people is that I am not a particularly creative person in terms of I'm not a poet, like stuff like that. But there are some songs that I don't know how those artists put those words together to help me understand a feeling and a thought that I was experiencing so perfectly. And so when I'm in my feels, I use music because music is a type of flow state, right? It literally has a melody and you can flow with the music. And I will put this playlist on, and it's like my fight while I'm listening to music. Another thing I will do is journal. Why journaling is particularly helpful for me and a lot of other people is because we're actually tapping into our level 1 energy. So, the advantage of level 1, which remember, when you're in victim mindset, the disadvantage is you don't take action, you often feel stuck. But the advantage is we always end up empty at some point in our lives, but we can harness that victim mindset by having other people speak life into us and teach us how to receive. And so for me, journaling helps get all the vinegar out of my heart and out of my body and onto paper. And it helps me get clarity around what is the subconscious thought that is actually rattling around in my brain that's causing all this fear and inaction. And so when I'm journaling, I'm also having a conversation with God. So, prayer meditation is my third tool that I like to go to when my imposter syndrome cycle comes up. Now, this might be too woo for you, and that's okay. I'm not for everybody. But meditation can actually take a lot of different kinds of forms. For some people, it can be puzzles are a good one. So, you can come focus on the puzzle, do stuff with your hands. There are studies that actually show that when you do things with your hands, you can process things a lot better. Another form of meditation that I like to employ is weeding, like literally going out into my yard and pulling out bad weeds that I don't want in my yard. You might laugh at that, but there is something magical about weeding. I feel like I'm pulling all the bad stuff, not only out of my garden, but out of my soul, and it drives me nuts when I don't get something by the root. But the point is that I'm sitting there working internally through stuff. And there's something magical with weeding, with journaling, with prayer that helps me get into flow state. And so, one of the things I want to touch on as well is that when you start getting into these highly anabolic spaces, so level 5, 6, 7, and 5 is peace, 6 is joy, 7 is passion. This is where wisdom and creativity in its purest forms come out. So, all of the most powerful creators and world changers have harnessed, especially level 6 and 7 energy. They believe that whether it's money or time or the resources that they have, they give and take as needed. They know that they can tap into this creative space and create anything that they want. There are no limitations for people with a lot of level 5, 6, 7 energy. And this is something that you can cultivate within yourself as well. And one of the other key kind of strategic ideas that I want you to start thinking about and embracing is when you operate at level 1, 2, 3, so victim, anger, and forgiveness, a lot of the times you're using physical tools to force the work. So, a to do list is a great example. To-do lists are wonderful, but it's us harnessing control to get something done. So I make a list. When I get to the bottom of that to-do list, the thing is done. I have controlled the situation. Yay, I did it. When we get to level 5, 6, 7, what we're actually harnessing are spiritual or metaphysical tools. Surrender is a big one. When I'm journaling and I'm having this conversation with God, I am saying to a certain degree, bro, I don't know what's happening. This is really hard for me. I need some help from you. I'm scared. And that's where I open myself up to being filled and encouraged and supported. Same thing goes for tools like trust. So I know, again, because of the benefit of hindsight, that in the past, when I trusted my higher power to do something amazing actually happened. And I was not the thing that was contingent on that happening. I had this wonderful client who is a complete badass. All my clients are badasses, honestly. But when this person came to me, they said, I've done everything in my power to get the job that I want. I've spent the last 10 plus years of my life getting all the education, the certificates, doing all the checklist things that everybody tells me I need to do to get this dream job. And it just has not happened for me. And I am so frustrated and I don't know what else to do. And so when we examine their past cycle of, can you think of another time when you tried to control a situation and create a certain outcome and it didn't work? And they're like, yeah, they came up with 2 examples right off the bat. And I said, how did that end up working out? And they're like, oh, it worked out great. And what we discovered was the mechanism that got them to shift from losing to winning was actually they literally had what they called a fuck it moment. So they're like, oh, I did everything I could. So I was like, fuck it. Listen, pie in the sky, like whatever's out there, like I need a little bit of help, universe kind of thing. And then the solution that they wanted landed right in their lap. Guys, I'm not making this up. This is exactly what the client told me. And I was like, okay, so what is this thing that you think created this solution that you couldn't create yourself? And they were like, do you think that there is some kind of God? Maybe I don't really know what that looks like. I'm like, okay, great. Let's start there. Your fuck it cycle is on some level, you surrender to something outside of yourself and you say, I need help. Somebody help me. And then that higher power shows up for you. So, how about instead of ending with that, since it works, how about let's start with your fuck it process and partner with God, your higher power, the universe first. And guys, ever since that person started their process with this fuck it mode, things have started aligning. Their joy, their passion is just pouring out of them. They literally sent me a text message the other day where they were like, I can't stop working. I'm just so excited. I'm so excited about this next career thing that I'm working on that I don't even want to rest. Honey, ride the wave. You're in flow state. Use it for as long as you can or as long as you want to, right? And so this is all about trial and error for you in finding what spiritual practices work best for you. If you're not a journaler, you might try actual meditating. I tried meditating back in the day. It didn't work for me for the longest. I discovered why. And the reason was because as a recovering perfectionist, which everybody with imposter syndrome struggles with perfectionism, I had this rule that said, if I try to meditate and I'm not awesome at it, then I am broken or it doesn't work for me or whatever. I would sit there and do my little meditation thing. And all of a sudden, I would start thinking about my to do list and whatever fight I got into with my loved one or whatever random stuff that was not having my mind clear. I thought I just wasn't built for meditation until I got a little bit of help from a coach. This coach was the Headspace application. So they have free and paid resources. And there's this like guy, I think he's British or something, and he has this very soothing voice. So I'm sitting there listening to this guided meditation, and he says, your brain is naturally going to go to other places. It's going to think about your to do list. It's going to think about that fight. It's going to think about whatever lack you have. This is normal. Your job is to become aware that you have strayed off the meditation and gently bring yourself back. This is why they call it meditation practice, not meditation perfect. I know this is Captain Obvious for you guys, but that was a really big aha moment for me. And now I've embraced mindfulness and meditation in my own way, weeding, puzzles, journaling, music, right? So we just have to try different things and figure out what works best for you. And so the hard part of this podcast episode actually comes in me explaining to you that the next and last step is something that I cannot articulate how it happens. It just does. And that is you flip a switch and you go into flow state. I wish I had some empirical data. I wish I could tell you exactly how it worked, but it's magical, is all I know. And I trust in that magic. But I know that when I work this new cycle to harness my imposter syndrome, I'm going to hit flow state at one point. And so, what does that cycle look like? I'm going to go over it again quickly. And my inner imposter pops up. I don't run away from it. I get excited because it means the breakthrough is right around the corner. I might sit and feel sad and bummed for myself. I'm human. You're allowed to do that. Then I get curious and I ask myself, when else have I experienced this? And then I have the aha moment of literally every time I'm about to do something that's aligned with my life purpose. And then I decide, how would I rather feel? I pick one of the energy levels and I think, what thought would I need to have to experience peace or joy or passion or whatever it might be? Usually it's 6 or 7, so joy or passion. Then I know I have to employ my spiritual practices in order to get to level 6 and 7. I put my fight songs on, I journal, I do my meditation, prayer, and surrender, and then something happens and I flip a switch. Now, one of the things I've committed to myself is being present for at least 90 seconds during every operation. You can imagine that running operations for between 50 and 100 people can get pretty crazy, and it does. We have moments when Things are very tense for hours on end sometimes because we have a suspect that we're trying to identify who's running surveillance detection or counter surveillance on us. I might be massaging some type A personalities. I might be having to kick someone off the op because their ego's wrecking everything. It can be really tough, but I'm intentional about my 90 seconds where I literally stop what I'm doing and I will look around the room and take in the joy of what I have partnered with other people to build. These individuals are so incredible, you guys. They sacrifice hours upon hours. They sacrifice weekends. They sacrifice holidays. They sacrifice time with their families because they want to protect their communities and they want to help kids. The number of times that over the radio, I've had someone say, Alani, we're not going to stop until you tell us that the operation's up for the day because they're that in flow and that invested in the work. The number of times that someone approaches me with an idea and they whisper it because they're so scared about this outside the box concept. And when they tell me and I say, dude, I don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to try it because I know you thought this through. So what's the worst that could happen? And when they employ that new tactic and it works, oh my gosh, it just blows you away. And I'm going to give you an example. Our intelligence analysts are so brilliant. I wish I could share the exact techniques and tactics that they use because they single-handedly have gotten the success rate of our positive identification of the suspects to 95+%. So what does that mean? That means 95% of the cases that I worked in that jurisdiction, because of the intel analysts and the tools and techniques that they used, they were able to identify 95% of our suspects before they ever set foot outside their door to commit the crime that they were going to commit. Do you think that it's incredibly powerful to have an entire intel dump, everything about your suspect, if they have access to kids, what they do for a living, where they live, their career history, all their social media? You don't think that's helpful in creating success and finding victims and holding perpetrators accountable? Abso-freaking-lutely. And it was because these very humble, very passionate intelligence analysts had the courage to offer up this new idea that hadn't been done before. And we did it. I'm so thankful for those people. Another example, there was one day we were doing an Operation Shine the Light, and it was about 2 a.m. And I remember there was a young girl that we were looking for, and we were using every tool in the kit. We were doing cell phone triangulation. We had all the most powerful agencies in the world. Oh, we had the National Child Protection Task Force. Shout out to my boys and girls over there. They are incredible justice seekers. They were international. They had people like calling into the op to help us with stuff. And we knew that this minor was in this one neighborhood, but we couldn't figure out exactly where. And everybody, it's 2 a.m. We've been going at this for 16 hours and we're trying to rack our brain to figure out what to do next. And I took my 90 seconds in that moment and looked around. Guys, we had all the police departments, the sheriffs, we had the FBI, we had the US Marshals, we had the Homeland Security investigations guys. We had so many amazing people there, and again, there were about 40 of them out there looking for that one girl. They've been looking for hours. And I remember in my heart just thinking, I know in my bones that this girl somehow feels the love that these 40 people have for her because they're out here not wanting to give up. I knew the team wasn't going to stop until I said, hey guys, let's wrap it up for the night. Try again tomorrow. We were so close. But something in me said, that's the connection. So that's that level 6, 7 experience that I was having of, even though we're not making contact with this girl, I trust and believe that the love we have for her is somehow protecting her today. And so that might be a little bit woo for you. That's okay. You've been operating from a scarcity and fear mindset in your level 1 and 2 for so long that you can't see the bigger picture. But if you are open to a different way of thinking, I would invite you to have a conversation about what your imposter syndrome cycle looks like. And so on average with the clients I work with, we work through this where we identify, and it takes 5 to 7 cycles for us to see what their specific imposter syndrome cycle is. And then we can start working to harness it. And what that looks like is just like the mat room for law enforcement. So when we're at the academy, we are in the mat room. We will practice different use of force scenarios. So somebody pulls out a gun, somebody pulls out a knife. Let's say somebody threatens a kid's life or something like that. And we mentally run through and react to the scenario. And then afterwards, we talk with the instructors about what went well, what didn't go well, what could we have done better. And that preparation is amazing because it shortens our reaction time and we've already practiced what we want to do. Now, life will throw zingers at you. And sometimes you can't prepare for everything. You're going to try, but sometimes you can't. That is where they become lessons learned. Even though you might have some terrible outcomes, from a level 6 joy perspective, remember level 6 says we all win all the time. I have the choice to lean into the joy of that situation and say, even though I did something that I'm not happy about, or maybe I'm not even proud of, the benefit of this is we all know we learn better from our mistakes than we do from our successes. So am I ever going to repeat that again? Absolutely not, because the feeling of guilt from making the wrong move can be so heavy sometimes that I'm never going to forget that lesson. And so in that way, I'm winning in that situation. And so once you identify what the mental gymnastics are, the stuff that we have to mentally prepare for, we can practice that. And then as you do it in real life, you come back in session, you debrief, and we do it better and better until you get to the point where you come back to me and you're like, it worked. It was awesome. I crushed it. All that mental preparation we did, it worked out perfectly. And I feel so good about it. So again, this is a practice, not a perfect. We want to practice and rehearse this so you can get to where you're fully aligned with your values, how you operate, how your imposter pops up, how that points to your life purpose, and you can harness that. Okay, humble warriors. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you'd like to get your own copy of my free life purpose exercise or values exercise, go to my website. You can download it there, or you can DM me life purpose or values at Mighty Sparrow Coaching on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. I will send it to you. If you know your life purpose and you're ready to start uncovering what your harnessing of the imposter syndrome looks like, check out my best-selling book, The Least of Us, available at all major book retailers. Or if you're like, oh, honey, I don't want your book, I want to work with you. Let's set up a discovery call and see if my coaching style is the perfect fit for you and for me as well, so that you can start harnessing your emotions to work for you rather than having them rule you. And so remember, humble warriors, what you think is your weakness is actually the key to unlocking your greatest superpower. I love you guys. Thanks so much for being here. See you next time. If you enjoyed this episode and would like some help overcoming your imposter syndrome, check out the free life purpose exercise on my website and subscribe to my blog. If you already know what your life purpose is and are ready to crush or harness your imposter syndrome, then you're going to love my best-selling book, The Least of Us: How Your Weakness Points to Your Greatest Power, available on Amazon and all major book retailers. Or you can hit me up at alani@mightysparrowcoaching.com to discuss private coaching or corporate and government training. That's ALANI@mightysparrowcoaching.com. Listen, there's only ever been one you, and there will only ever be one you. And you have a specific gift to give that the world desperately needs. Don't let your self-doubt be the thing preventing you from living your most joyful and impactful life. Until next time, I'm always cheering you on.